Hi, my name's Phil. I like to talk about politics. In this video, I'd like to update with the latest news on how the UK government is dealing with EU citizens resident in the UK after the transition period ends at the start of 2021. But first, if you'd like to receive notifications of daily news and political commentary, then please subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification icon. So, the issue of EU settled status, sometimes referred to as EUSS, is important for a lot of people, of course. Obviously, it's absolutely vital to EU citizens living in the UK, most especially those who have properly settled in the UK. Some have children with UK citizens, and there's a ridiculous scenario possible with the crass way that Boris Johnson's government have been dealing with this, in that those families could in theory be split up and the children be rendered stateless, which of course would be against international law. But it's also important for many UK citizens as well, quite apart from those who are partners of EU citizens. Employers will want to know that their staff are not going to be whisked out of the country with little notice. Many of us also have friends who'd be affected. So last week, Guy Verhofstadt met with our Brexit Secretary, Stephen Barclay, to get some assurances, assuming you can trust any assurances coming from this government. So nominally, EU citizens have until June the 30th, 2021, 6 months after the transition period is due to end, in order to apply for settled status. So in other words, when the transition period ends, it doesn't mean to say, off you go. Now, the government are proudly proclaiming that 2.5 million people have already been granted settled status. However, all EU citizens who were legally resident in the UK before Brexit were supposed to be automatically granted settled status. But Boris Johnson has gone back on that promise, and what the government is a little more coy about is that pretty much as many people have been accepted have been rejected, and there are a lot more stuck in the system as well. Bear in mind, there was no significant expansion in the civil service to deal with Brexit. And yet Brexit is by far the biggest workload of every single government department. So there simply aren't the staff to deal with the applications in a timely manner. All the more reason to get it done quickly. You know, anyone who needs to apply for this, or even thinks they might want to apply for it, let's say you haven't decided yet, do it. And if you haven't done it already, you need to do it immediately. Not wait until anywhere near the actual deadline for several reasons, which I'll hopefully go through. But there have been fears that EU citizens without settled status would be automatically deported from July 2021. Now, Stephen Barclay has been saying that this won't be the case. He said that there will be a process whereby people can apply after this time and explain why it wasn't possible to do so before. But that should ring alarm bells. Bear in mind that this month, Boris Johnson has ordered his MPs to vote through more measures that are in line with what is known as the hostile environment policy. And this is the official Home Office policy that has actually existed since 2012 and is designed to make it as difficult as possible to remain in the UK. And those are not my words, those are the words on the Home Office website describing this policy. So that means that a civil servant reviewing a late application has to begin from a default position of not wanting to consider the reason for lateness as being acceptable. And if they don't consider the reason for lateness to be acceptable, the whole thing is rejected. Remember Windrush? Many people fell foul of this because they didn't even know they had something to apply for. The same may be true of some EU citizens, particularly some more vulnerable ones. Not everyone keeps tabs on the news. Not everyone knows they need to do this, or would have friends and family that would suggest it to them. Don't imagine there's letters going out to people reminding them to do this. No. Similarly, many don't have the physical paperwork to prove their status. It is available digitally. It exists. It's not that they can't prove it. But a lot of agencies and employers, landlords, that sort of thing, can't be bothered to check online. If you haven't got the physical paperwork, it's like they can't be bothered. And so the fear is that people won't be allowed to remain in private accommodation, or they'll get trouble in their jobs. The government have said that they will think about making printouts available so people did have paper evidence. What do you mean think about? Not implement? No, they're just going to think about it. At a time when the timer is ticking down rapidly, they're going to think about it. Because the problem is, this isn't a problem waiting for the middle of 2021. This is a problem now. Because some people may be denied employment or rent on the basis that they might have trouble later on. It's all right you renting a place out and then finding out that in a year's time or a year and a half's time, they may not legally have the right to stay there anymore, and then you, the landlord, are potentially in trouble and you've got to go through all the process of evicting. Maybe you just don't bother to rent out to that person right now. You know, and it isn't just late applications that will struggle to be successful either. They are at the highest risk because, as I say, before someone will even go through the application to review whether or not to grant it on anything else, they will first of all look at that. Why haven't you done this before the deadline? And again, they have to start from a default position of that's a bit of a rubbish excuse. But ultimately, you know, someone may say, I didn't know, and they'll just go, well, that's a rubbish excuse. But it's not. And that is why it is really important, because even the applications on time are still subject to that hostile environment policy. The default position is, I am going to decline this. The person reading it has that default position. I am going to decline this. They have to read through to find something that makes them go, oh, I can't decline it. You know, and that's why it is really, really important to apply immediately. If you know anyone, don't assume that they've applied. Just sort of say to them, have you applied? If they haven't already, they need to. Because you're still fine for the rest of this year at least, but we don't know how long the backlog is. And in the absence of the automatic right to stay that was promised last year, but that promise has now been removed, the hostile environment policy kicks in, and with nothing to override it, that is the guidance for people reviewing these applications. The default position is, can we get rid of this person? If the answer is yes, they're getting rid of them. And that's all there is to it. And if it's going to be a decline, if the application is going to be declined, then you need to know with as much grace period as possible to either make appeals or make alternative arrangements. I mean, you know, it is appalling. It's not just an inhumane policy, but it is sheer madness as well for a country, a very services-driven country that needs more immigration to power our economy, not less. But it is, unfortunately, what comes of the destructive Conservative government that we seem to have a masochistic desire to elect. So I hope you found the video useful. If you did, don't forget to click the like button. And if you'd like to support the channel further, then please also click the Patreon link for details. And until next time, I'll see you later.